and Paul was going to talk about the value of doing the right thing. And Paul kind of epitomizes, as does AGI, about doing the right thing. And I say that because they hired me, which I like to think was the right thing. Certainly was at my stage of my career. And I had 12 great years at AGI, which is just a fantastic company. And I'd like to think a lot of that was born out of meeting those people out in Colorado and setting up an opportunity for people to meet. You guys are so blessed. I'm not going to ask anyone to show their hands who's under 30, because I know Rich Del Bello will raise his and lie about it. But for the generation here, the SGX generation, you are so lucky, so blessed at the amount of opportunities that are in front of you, and what you can do, and the people that you can meet, whether it's through the Space Generation Advisory Council, or the WIA, or all the Future Space Leaders Foundation, all these things that are available to you. They weren't all available to a lot of folks 10, 15, 20 years ago. So I think that is a critical thing of building who you're networking. Networking is imperative. It's what you're going to, throughout your career, what you're going to know, the people that you meet at this age of your life, you're going to recycle and keep coming back to them. In Washington, people don't just go away. They recycle and they come back, and the next thing you know, they're the Secretary of the Air Force, or they're heading up NASA, or something. They keep coming back throughout your life, and it's imperative just to stay in touch with those people, whether it's a quick email or meeting up for a drink or coffee. At my age, the drinks are less and the breakfasts are more, but I think you should embrace opportunities like that. There are so many opportunities out here. There's so many opportunities in Washington to meet people. And so that base that you build now, it is going to be, you'll see later in life, so critical. I see Brett Alexander trying to hold back the tears of this thing. But Brett is a guy who I met probably in my first year in Washington. And I was watching his career progression. And later in life, when the opportunity at the Commercial Space Flight Federation came about, Brett was one of the first people I talked to, and the guidance that he gave me. He said, "Don't do it. Don't do it. You'll regret it." But he's been also a great friend and mentor as others. I love the space industry. I wake up every morning and I am so grateful that I am in this industry, because I know people that aren't in this industry, and they're boring, and they're dull, and they're lawyers or bankers. And yes, they're making more money than us, right? And they don't have to deal with startups. But they don't have the opportunity to see tomorrow, with Jeff Bezos and the announcement of, well, I won't say, I'll leave it for you guys, but the great things that we're seeing in our industry of what companies are doing. When Sharisha was part of CSF, we got out and we went to all the different companies because I wanted to see what was real. There's a lot of companies that have great PowerPoint slides, but there's nothing to them. So Sharisha and I went out, and I would really want to touch these companies and touch flight hardware, and she would pull me back from the red line and say, "You can't touch these things. They're real. Just trust us." So we looked at some of the other companies out there. And if you take a look, those are the type of companies that you could be working for. It's awful out there. It is just absolutely awful. Maybe not the luxuriant flowing hair club for scientists. I think there is merit to that one. But you could be working for the Snack Food Association. What perks does that organization have? So I'm talking about networking and connections. Connections lead to success. The foundations as I said, the foundations that you build now earlier in your life, you will reap the benefits later on. And I will tell you why. I guess it's about a year and a half ago, one of the most important pieces of space legislation came up. It was called the Commercial Space Launch Competitiveness Act. And this was going to be probably the biggest piece of space legislation since 1984 that was going to come out. And this was a hard bill because everyone wanted something out of it. And there's all sorts of different commercial space companies, and one wanted to see indemnification, and one wanted to see mineral resources, or drilling in space, and others liability. And to try to get not just our own organization, the CSF, on the same sheet of music, but helping these legislators to write this legislation, we had to coalesce our own organization and then also work with congressional staff and House staff and Senate staff, two entirely different animals. And then in that mix, you have Republicans and Democrats that don't always see eye to eye. And I truly believe that it was because of the network that we had that we helped kind of bring all the people on the same boat. I'm not sure if many are familiar, but about 5,000 pieces of legislation are introduced every year. And of that 5,000, I can't say the number, only about 5% of all these bills are ever passed. So to get a standalone piece of legislation passed, it's going to take a lot. It's a Herculean effort. We got to the point where the bill was I'm beating you to the chase, where the bill was, it was good in the Senate, good in the House, and then all of a sudden there was a showstopper. There was just the Senate and the Senate Democrats and the House Republicans were just at loggerheads over one or two provisions, and so I kind of called upon some of these people that I knew early on. I'll give a plug. Remind me about this. But there's someone I knew for about 15 years that worked with. Never really asked him for much, but on this one we really needed his help. And we decided to break bread together. And we got the Senate Democrats together, the House Republicans. We said, hey, why don't we all go out for a drink? Why don't we get a drink and we'll settle this over? And they're all like, I got kids, I got basketball practice. I'm like, everyone, all right, I get it. Everyone's old now. Let's do breakfast. We'll get up early and have a cup of coffee or a croissant. And we talked for about 45 minutes about our kids, about high school sports, about one guy was in the Navy Reserve, so I indulged him and talked about the Navy. God spare me. And after about an hour, we kind of came up to the notion like, hey, we've got a lot more in common together than we have opposed. And at the end of that hour breakfast, we said, all right, do you think we can move the ball here on, I think it was indemnification? Can we get 5 years or 9 years instead of 5 years? Everyone said, yeah, I guess that's about right. And we did. And about a week later, it went to the White House. It was passed by House and Congress, and Obama said, where the heck is that commercial space legislation? And he signed it, and it was a huge success. It was a huge success for the industry. It was a stepping stone, and it meant so much more, I think, to the companies that are starting up now, to the companies that are already existing. But I think everyone won with this legislation. Again, I say this comes down with personal connections, with networking, with doing the right thing, getting yourself out there, sometimes getting out of your comfort zone. There's a handful of our interns, the CSF interns here, and I force them to go to events, and we take them to events, and I leave them. I like put them out on a life raft and say, you're fine. Here's so-and-so, here's one person, go get business cards. And since then, we've had all of our interns have gone out into the workforce and are with some of the best companies. They're with Virgin Galactic, they're with SpaceX, they're with Blue Origin, they're with Deloitte, they're all over at NASA. And it's probably one of the most gratifying things that I can do. So if you're old now, push the young people. If you're young, take care of those old people that are trying to help you later. I say, I'm going to do a shameless plug. Stephanie with AGI, they always do this March Madness tournament. And people say, why in the world would you do an all-day event for 12 hours watching college basketball? And the idea is because you're going to meet people that you never knew, you're going to develop similarities, commonalities, and you have a great time. And that's where some of the folks from that congressional meeting, and that's what I believe. I believe networking is the key to all the success. And with that, I thank you so much for being here, and I yield my time back to Sharisha.
No time.
All right.